All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast. Now, don't look now, but for the first time since 2013, the New York Knicks are playoff bound. Now, under first year head coach Tom Thibodeau, the Knicks have done it with defense. And it's all about this scrappy, relentless team at each end of the floor. And this is something that the folks in New York City can relate to. You look at this team, you look at some of their key players so far this season. Julius Randle has really emerged as a big time player for the Knickerbockers. He's averaging 24 points per game, more than 10 boards. You look at what the youngster RJ Barrett is bringing to the table with 17 and a half points. And of course, the veteran Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose was at his best with Chicago under Tom Thibodeau. Of course, he once upon a time was the NBA's MVP. Of course, he had that knee injury and, his career, just spiraled downhill. But, credit to D Rose, he has battled. And, he is all about persistence and he is all about resiliency and toughness. And that is what a Tom Thibodeau team does. They're resilient, they're tough, they fight, they scrap, they claw. And I think Derrick Rose is the embodiment of that. And you look at this Knicks team overall, they have gone out there and they have made their fan base in New York City once again believe, because I know coming into this season, so much of the back page hoopla in New York City was around the Brooklyn Nets, and rightfully so. They had Kevin Durant, they had Kyrie Irving, and then, of course, mid-season, we saw the Nets acquire James Harden in that 14 trade from the Houston Rockets. But you look at the Knicks, and they've done an anti-Nick from the standpoint that, in years past, people have grown accustomed to seeing the Knicks go out there and spend the big bucks in free agency like the Nets have, but also spending the big bucks in free agency and not getting the dollar value in return. We've seen the Knicks blow so much money on so many free agents over the years, and it's simply blown up in their faces. The Knicks, this regime this time around, they spend the money, but they're not going crazy with it. Going out there, not giving out max contracts, so to speak. And you know what? This team is hungry. That's the biggest thing that you can credit this Knicks team with. They're hungry. They believe in their coach. They go out there and they compete on a night in and night out basis. And that is something that the folks in New York City appreciate. Defensively, you're talking about the top defensive team in the NBA. The Knicks have only, they're number one in field goal percentage. They're also number one in points allowed. And of course, if the season ended today, we'd be talking about the Knicks facing the Milwaukee Bucks potentially in the first round of the playoffs. And I'll tell you like this. If the season ended today, and the Knicks, of course, have their record of 39 and 31 after they beat the Spurs last night, 102-98 at the Garden. If the season were to end today and the Knicks were to play the Bucks, I guarantee you that the Knicks would give the Bucks all that they can handle and then some, because of their defense. What got the Bucks out of the playoffs the last couple of years? Two teams that played defense and made life tough and frustrating for Giannis Antetokounmpo. We saw it in 2019 with the Toronto Raptors. Of course, they had Kawhi Leonard leading the way. And of course, last year we saw it in the playoff bubble with the Miami Heat as Jimmy Butler simply got in the head of Giannis, and the rest is history. Now, don't get me wrong. The Knicks do not have a defender of the caliber of a Jimmy Butler or a Kawhi, but what they do, they have spirit and they play team defense. And it's one of those where, you know what, they're going to make life tough for Milwaukee. They're going to go out there and contest as many shots as possible. And there's not going to be any quote unquote easy baskets, which is something that the Bucks have, really gotten accustomed to with Giannis. Is the majority of his game is in transition. But you look at it right now. I look at this Knicks team, and they've put in the work first and foremost to avoid being in the play-in tournament. And, coming into the season, me personally, I felt that the Knicks could be in contention to be like ninth or 10th in the Eastern Conference. They've exceeded those expectations from my book. And I guarantee you they've exceeded the expectations of a lot of other people. But, first and foremost, credit to them for doing what they had to do to avoid the play-in tournament. That's number one. Second, you look at this Knicks team, regardless of how you see them, regardless of the expectations of the hardcore Knicks fans now that they see this team in that playoff bubble, this team is playing with house money. And the reason why is because nobody's really expecting the Knicks to do that much in the playoffs. Nobody's expecting them to go out there and beat Milwaukee. And whenever you have a situation like that, the deck is always in your favor. I look at this Knicks team. Nobody was expecting anything coming into the regular season. Honestly, the Knicks had won 30 games. That would have been a good step in the right direction. The Knicks have far exceeded this. More than likely, they're going to finish the season by winning at least 40 games. And remember, this is only a 72-game NBA season that we're talking about here. So you look at it, the Knicks have exceeded those expectations. They're going out there against a Buck team, a beatable Buck team. And you know what? It would not surprise me to see this Knicks team advance to the second round. Now, I know things can still shift between now and the end of the regular season. We could still possibly see the Knicks in that 4-5 matchup. We could see them playing the Atlanta Hawks in the first round or the Miami Heat. Anything can happen. But the most important thing about this Knicks team right now, they have made their fan base believers again. And that is a credit to Tom Thibodeau. There are other guys, other coaches around the NBA that definitely deserve recognition in regards to the coach of the year conversation. But Tibbs has to be right there. I mean, obviously people are going to talk about Monty Williams with the Phoenix Suns. You're going to hear about Nate McMillan. He took over as the interim head coach with the Atlanta Hawks. You're also going to hear about Quinn Snyder with the Utah Jazz. But for my money, it's Tibbs, because you look at it, nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing was expected of this Knicks team coming into this season. And they're right in the mix in that Eastern Conference. Credit to them for taking the bull by the horns. They're doing what they have to do. And I'll tell you right now, Tom Thibodeau is really showing once again that he knows how to get it done as a coach. He had a good run with the Chicago Bulls. Things didn't work out for Tibbs with the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think first and foremost, it wasn't a good fit as far as his mindset and the personnel and the way that organization is run there. You look at the Knicks. Tom Thibodeau was an assistant for many years with the New York Knicks. He understands the ins and outs of this franchise, and he knows how to get it done in New York City. And I think this was a perfect fit. He was hungry to show that he could still coach and get it done. He has some of his holdovers, some of his veterans, some of his guys from the Bulls that worked with him, Derrick Rose, and of course, Taj Gibson is another one. He spent a portion of the season working on his rotations to see the guys who, really going to fit into his style of play. Of course, everybody doesn't fit when a new head coach takes over, because he has some holdovers from the previous regime. You have to understand that and expect that. But Tibbs has gone out there. He's done things his way. The front office has, stayed out of his way and allowed him to build his team and his vision. And you know what? The sky's the limit right now for the New York Knicks. I think they're definitely building something for the future. Hopefully, this experience in the playoffs will be a stepping stone for them. I'm going to be a realist. It's a situation. I don't expect the Knicks to win the East, but I do expect them to be a tough out for any of their opponents in the playoffs. I know that there are some people in the New York City area who would love to see the Knicks and Nets play in the first round of the playoffs, or even potentially the second round of the playoffs. We'll have to wait and see. But make no mistake about it, this is definitely a step in the right direction for the Knicks. They are going to be a force to be reckoned with in this postseason, and hopefully for their sake and for their fans' sake as well, they can build off of this and go back to being consistent contenders in the East. The NBA is a much better place when the Knicks are in contention. I mean, if you go back to the 1990s, the Patrick Ewing era, Madison Square Garden was rocking. And of course, the Knicks always came up short against the Michael Jordan-led Chicago Bulls. They had great battles with the Indiana Pacers, but make no mistake about it, the Garden was rocking. NBC and the NBA alike went to the bank on that because, the Knicks were always one of their marquee teams. always on those Sunday afternoon games, of course, on NBC, and of course, in the primetime games on like the stations such as TNT and TBS. Now we're seeing that once again as people are talking about the Knicks, people are believing about the Knicks, and it's great for them. It's great for their fan base. It's great for the NBA and the brand overall if the Knicks could be a consistent contender. So let's see what they can do building off of this going forward. But you know what? You got to tip your hat to the blue and orange. They've done their thing. If MSG was allowed to have maximum capacity right now, I guarantee you there'd be more than 19,000 strong at Garden chanting for this team. But, you know, those who are there really appreciate this team. And there is definitely a buzz around the Knicks once again in the Big Apple. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time to thank you for tuning into this 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. If you like what you saw and watched today, please feel to hit that like button. And also, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There is also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. Take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.